So silence your cell phones, hold your applause, and tune into the truth.
Oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
Getting beat up by 9 guys in Syracuse, to me, there's not a whole lot of shame in.
From the 315 to the world, this is the Heel to Face podcast.
The cream of the crop! Wow, man, freaked out!
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Heel to the Face.
I said, are you ready?
From Armory Square in downtown Syracuse, New York, let's send it now to Brandon and Jared.
Bad luck seems to be my middle name. They might as well tag me up with my buddies from Syracuse.
Another edition of the Heel to the Face podcast. We're joined, as always, to my right-hand side. If you're watching on YouTube, to my left, Brandon the Icebreaker Clements. You can find him on YouTube, or you can find him on Twitter at Icebreaker21. Myself on Twitter and Instagram at KRockJared. You can find us on Twitter by probably clicking on one of our links that you find on Twitter, and that's at Heel to the Face. We're coming on Survivor Series. We're coming on some controversial tweets this week from Tony Khan, Jim Cornette, not controversial tweets, but controversial on the show NWA Power. A lot to talk about, but I'll probably start by saying this, and I don't normally say this, but we're heading into Survivor Series weekend, Wargames on Saturday. The weird kind of thing we got going on right now is the fact that we still have SmackDown to go. Normally at this time, we're so used to all the shows being wrapped up, the pay-per-view being, on the way, but we still have SmackDown to come on Friday night from Chicago, where Survivor Series will be. But I don't normally say this, and it's not because of the wrestling. Obviously, everyone always says NXT cards are better than the WWE cards. But if I had a ticket to one show this weekend, I might be going to Wargames over Survivor Series. Survivor Series just, even from the spectacle standpoint, because I got my WrestleMania tickets, I don't have my NXT TakeOver tickets, because I go for that show regardless of which product has the better wrestling. It seems like this product just overall just not just has the better wrestling, but intrigues me overall much better. And it's from the same arena, so I feel we're going to get pyro and all the same schematics.
Yeah, I agree. I think NXT War Games once again will, NXT itself will be the show of the weekend. I feel like War Games is going to be, I think it's going to be a fantastic show. I can't wait to watch it. And also Triple H did a press call today, and he's really hyping up the Team Ciampa open slot. So he called it epic, is what he said. So we'll see who fills that in. As always, NXT usually delivers in these big pay-per-views. I mean, I'll still say this. I think Survivor Series will still be it should be a decent card. I'm a little impartial because I love Survivor Series.
I know, that's the one thing I remember about you. You love Survivor Series.
I love Survivor Series, so I'm a little impartial with that. I still think overall NXT's product has been a lot better. So at this point, I have to go War Games. But Survivor Series, it still should be a decent card compared to what we've seen on some other pay-per-views recently.
So this is going to be our first domestic pay-per-view since SmackDown moved to Friday nights. So are you expecting I'll ask you this, are you expecting a new set for Survivor Series to then be used on SmackDown and for War Games, because they're not going to change it? Or do you expect War Games and Survivor Series and Monday Night Raw to all have the SmackDown set? Or do you think somewhere in between?
I think it's going to be all the same set. I really do. I
all
think
the same set, but
yeah.
what set are you expecting them to? Because they're starting the week with SmackDown.
SmackDown.
So you think SmackDown set's just going to go the weekend?
I think so. I think the Fox.
It's the nicest set.
Yeah, it's definitely the nicest set, and I think for Fox probably gets to call that shot, so to speak. So I think WWE would be too much work, I guess, where they switch from the Fox SmackDown set to War Games to Survivor Series. So I think they're just going to start the weekend on Friday with the SmackDown set, and then Monday Night Raw, because it's all in the same arena, all same set.
I think you might get what we got a couple weeks ago in England. We got that old Raw SmackDown mix set back when they were in England, because they taped Raw and SmackDown the same night there. So you might get that, but either way, that's one of the many disappointments that you're going to get for the fact that the show is in the same arena. And I mean, till the cows come home about the arena it is. I've been in the United Center. I've been in the Allstate Arena. I understand price, but when you're there for a whole weekend and you're getting people from all over the country and all over the world to watch Survivor Series, the United Center is a much better representation of Chicago than the Allstate Arena is. That just will always continue to befuddle me. I get the money purpose, but the United Center is up there with MSG as one of the only two arenas that I think could host, that can, and I wouldn't be disappointed hosting WrestleManias.
Well, here's the thing too. There's multiple layers to this. So United Center I'm a huge basketball fan. That was the home of the greatest basketball player of all time, Michael Jordan. So that was Michael Jordan's place that he played for many, many years. Also, it's a huge arena. You've been there. I've never had a chance to go to Chicago, but I think United Center is one of the bigger basketball arenas.
I think it's the biggest in the country.
I think it is. I think you might be right because it's what's it seat 20,000 plus
23. It can fit in there.
Well, that's kind of ironic. 23. Michael Jordan's 23. But no, I mean it's a big arena, and obviously you could fill it in a little bit more, or you're going to get a decent crowd for a big show like a WrestleMania. A Royal Rumble, things like that.
It's crazy because if WrestleMania said they were going to Chicago, and obviously it's a little too cold to be outside at Wrigley Field or Soldier Field or any of the other places, the United Center is the only arena that I feel really still encompasses the spectacle that WrestleMania is, but still being an arena. And I said
100%.
that and Madison Square Garden are really the only two, maybe Staples Center are the only that you can say it's in an arena, but it still doesn't lose any of its luster. So it's sad that WWE always goes to the Allstate Arena, and at least couldn't have pulled it out for the WrestleManias they've been there. I'm talking WrestleMania 22. That was really, I think, kind of sad because if you've been to Chicago, it's not just a smaller arena, but it's in the outskirts. I mean, it's literally like if you came to Syracuse and instead of being at the Carrier Dome for WrestleMania, you went to SUNY Oswego out in the outskirts. So you're not just not using the venue we're known for. You're not even then. You're coming here and then not even here.
It's not even.
You're driving past the iconic. Yeah, everybody is hanging out around the United Center the day of WrestleMania and then taking buses to get out of town.
To me, it equates to you have MSG and you have the Barclays Center.
Yeah,
use MSG.
Yeah, one is in Brooklyn. That's not even in Manhattan. One is both better and more iconic and more centralized. I mean, that was my big gripe about WrestleMania weekend this past year, is that Madison Square Garden wasn't used for a lot of things. So outside of going to that New Japan Wrestling show, no WrestleMania stuff was actually in Manhattan, which is essentially New York City. Everything was in New Jersey. Everything was on Long Island. You're like, what's the point of coming to New York City if you're not even going to be doing anything in New York City?
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's as simple as you want to use the iconic arenas. Like I just don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. Like United Center just has so much history to it. Allstate's just, to me, it's just another arena,
And it's a much smaller arena.
Oh, 100%. It's
and it kind of fits. I understand. In this aspect, you're probably not going to get huge crowds for Monday Night Raw. You're probably not going to get huge crowds for SmackDown because you do have all the shows. So maybe you do want a small arena in that regard. But either way, Survivor Series this weekend from the Allstate Arena, the old Rosemont Horizon, back in the day. A historic arena, at least when it comes to WWE's use, because they've been there a bunch and they've had a lot of iconic moments there. Do you see or have anything from Survivor Series that really sticks out to you that you're looking forward to?
Not really. I mean, overall, I think it's going to be a good card because to me, I always equate the Survivor Series. We've talked about this many a times over the last, we've been doing this, 2.5 years, almost 3 years. So I always equate it to Survivor Series is like the all-star game, so to speak, in all these sports. You get the big names together, you do these matches. The aspect of the show that I really like is I like the fact it's new. We've talked about it, I think, on previous episodes, but I think the NXT element to it, I think it's given a little extra kick. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they incorporate War Games and then how it incorporates to NXT on Sunday. It's going to be interesting. I think you see different layers. Honestly, one of the matches I'm looking forward to is I want to see Shayna Baszler, I want to see Bayley, and I want to see how Becky Lynch. I want to see that three-way match. I think that's going to be interesting. I do like the Roderick Strong match with Shinsuke and AJ Styles. That's going to be fun. I think there's a lot of great competitors. I'm looking forward to it. I like the fact also that Roderick Strong is the North American champion, and they equal him like we've always talked about. We've always equated it to Intercontinental U.S. title. So I like that they're kind of making it known that like that's the level of the championship it is. I've liked what they've how NXT has really taken over, so to speak, on Raw and SmackDown. You've seen Undisputed Era make some appearances. It's you've seen the NXT women's side of the locker room has been doing some things. It's been interesting. I like the NXT aspect of it. I think without the NXT ingredient in this trio, it might be just an average pay-per-view. I think it's going to be pretty decent, but overall, War Games is always fun. The last War Games we had some memorable moments, so I'm thinking along the same lines. another great War Games coming up this Saturday.
Plus a women's War Games match this weekend. And what's nice about that, from what I'm noticing looking at the War Games card, is there's, outside of the Cruiserweight Championship and the NXT or the number one contendership for the NXT UK Championship or the NXT Championship, there aren't any championship matches on the card, which was going to scare me a little bit because of the fact that it's going to be a better card without the championships. The reason why is because those Survivor Series matches are pretty much made in stone. So this would be kind of like a house show, essentially. I mean, if the NXT North American Championship was on the line, let's say, I would probably assume that it's going to be defended successfully because they've already got this guy in for, same with Shayna Baszler with the Women's Championship of NXT. I'm glad they're not defending it because it would seem a little too, easy to predict that they're going to just be defending all the championships because they want Shayna Baszler. That's what they've been doing. They want her in that triple threat women's match at Survivor Series. So that's what kind of muckies this up a little bit, is the fact that there is the NXT pay-per-view the night before. I agree with you that the NXT element is the most interesting aspect. Obviously, 100%. The championship matches, Rey Mysterio versus Brock Lesnar, I don't expect that to be long, but I am curious, what they can do with that. Obviously, is Cain Velasquez going to get involved in any way? Is Rey Mysterio going to be a champion for the first time in a very long time? And obviously, the more intriguing championship matchup, Daniel Bryan versus Bray Wyatt. Not because I really believe that Daniel Bryan's going to win the belt, but I think that those guys, unlike Brock and Rey Mysterio, can put on a really good match.
Yeah, I think the ingredients between the clash of styles between Bray Wyatt and Daniel Bryan, it makes for a really good match. Again, I agree. The result is not something I'm not buying Daniel Bryan winning the matchup itself, but I think you're right. I think it's going to be a lot more interesting of a match. They're going to put on a good show. Rey Mysterio, Brock Lesnar. I don't see that match lasting more than 5 minutes.
But the one main reason why I never liked Survivor Series is because of what you say. It is like an all-star game where the results don't really matter. If NXT wins or Raw wins or SmackDown wins, it doesn't matter for anything. See, the storylines don't progress any further.
I disagree with you there too, though, because it's funny because I almost contradict myself because I'm not a huge fan of the All-Star games in most sports. Honestly, I'm not like the NBA, the NFL, MLB. Not a huge fan of it, but for some reason I've always liked this aspect of WWE because growing up, like seeing Survivor Series. You got to see all the big boys, so to speak.
But growing up, it was much differently though, because there wasn't the 24-hour cycle of wrestling that we have nowadays.
That's also true. But even going back and back in the day, those are the times where you got to see some of the big names actually on tagging up, and it's. I just thought the uniqueness of it as a kid going back and watching some of those old matches on the network. I enjoy that, and I like this aspect of it. It's not my typical. I'm not a typical fan of the all-star experience, so to speak. But in this case, I like that WWE has the Survivor Series. It's the second longest pay-per-view tradition that we have, and I like that fact where you put the Roman Reigns of the world. You have Kevin Owens in there. You got all these big names in these cool six. What do they got? It's a triple threat 3-person match or something like that.
I mean, a bunch of them, yes.
It's. I mean, the matches themselves are they're interesting because you're getting 3 stars from one brand, 3 stars from the other brand, and 3 stars from the other brand. To me, it makes it very interesting. So that'll be interesting. I mean, I'll say this again: NXT War Games will still be the show of the weekend. But does that surprise anybody? I don't think so, because when NXT has a pay-per-view on this, obviously in the same weekend as as the main WWE roster. NXT is going to be the better show. We all know that. But at the same time, I still think Survivor Series with this NXT ingredient, I think it's going to.
I don't always think NXT is the better show. I think NXT always has the better wrestling. But let's say WrestleMania weekend. I mean, you can't admit or deny WrestleMania, for example, is the better show. Even if,
it's more of a
there's
spectacle.
a reason why 80,000 people are at it, because it is a show. There's a reason why I get excited to go to WrestleMania, because it's a show.
It's a spectacle
versus just professional wrestling.
It's not. Yes. It's a spectacle.
So this weekend,
more than
though, I really think that NXT could be the better show because it's got more intrigue. I mean, things matter. You got a War Games match that people are going to get really brutal in that. I don't know how brutal and how awesome the wrestling's going to be when we got 15 guys in the ring. In these Survivor Series matches. And triple threat matches have never really been a huge favorite of mine, just because you always have that element where 2 are wrestling and then 1 is kind of the third wheel.
Yeah, just chilling somewhere. Outside the ring. he's injured, he's out.
And then regardless of who wins any of these matches, I mean, it doesn't matter if AJ wins, Shinsuke wins, Roderick Strong wins, no championships are changing hands.
But I like the fact that they're incorporating NXT, and I want to see like how they tally this up at the end of the night, like what brand won. I'm kind of curious to see.
I'm rooting to Team John Laurinaitis, if you ask me. Or is it Teddy Long or Vicky Guerrero?
Vicky Guerrero.
I mean,
God.
this Survivor Series, it's funny that they came out with years ago. Remember the Bragging Rights pay-per-view? But it was weird that it came out at the same time the Survivor. It was like 2 weeks before Survivor Series.
It's the same concept.
Yeah, they had Bragging Rights, and then 2 weeks later they'd have Survivor Series.
That to me made no sense.
And it was dumb on Vince's part. I remember there was a lot of rumors going around. They just wanted to scrap Survivor Series because Bragging Rights was Survivor Series.
Yeah, that to me it was.
So I said, well, just make Survivor Series Bragging Rights.
Yeah,
and that's what they did.
It's poor booking. That's really. I mean, that's how you would equate it. I mean, I'll tell you this. I kind of want to see what brand wins the wins the most matches, or do we get ties? I mean, I'm curious to see what this entails, and then what goes into, say, NXT wins. Does that mean NXT is the premier brand? I mean, it's do I see that happening? I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to see how this is going to unfold. I really want to see how the WWE creative is going to incorporate who is the superior brand versus the other two.
So moving on to the other big wrestling company we talked about a lot last week, coming off their pay-per-view event. Some big things coming. They apparently do have at least the name rights for Bash at the Beach, and they're replacing not a pay-per-view event, but one of their weekly shows in January is going to be Bash at the Beach. It's going to be from Miami, but it's going to be a Wednesday night, so it's going to be on TNT. It's not going to be a pay-per-view,
Sweet,
from what I know.
Yeah.
So do you like that idea right there? Let's just start with that. Do you like the idea of replacing the show with a pay-per-view, or would you like the pay-per-view to be separate?
No, I'm okay with it. I think it's a cool concept. I think AEW is going to try things that maybe WWE is afraid to do, or just doesn't want to do because of, they're just kind of, coasting along. I like it. I think it could work one of two ways. It could be a hit or it could be a miss. I'm leaning towards more of a hit. I think it's going to work well. I mean, the Bash at the Beach concept has always been, I've always liked it.
It is unique doing it in January. I get it. They're going to be in Miami. That's where
it's always
using it in January. I wonder if that, it's part of the stipulation that, you can have the name, you just can't use it. You really can't, because the logos and nothing symbolizes the WCW name of it. It is literally like the name itself is all that they took.
That's fine.
They have their own spin on everything.
Yeah, they got their own look on it. I mean, I'm sure AEW is going to do it right. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion with the AEW lately with the CM Punk, debut on Backstage. I'll let you go into it because there was a little bit of a Twitter battle going on there.
Yeah, so CM Punk put on Twitter this past week, "It is weird trying to catch up on 5+ years of wrestling. I'm doing what I can. There's bright spots, mostly women. He enjoys that. Obviously, the women have taken a big part in wrestling since he has been gone. There's bad, too. I'm going to talk about it, and no one is safe. Join us." And then tweets and links everybody that's a part of WWE Backstage. Tony Khan, for some reason I don't understand, decided he needed to respond to the tweet and said, "No one is safe. Sounds like a plane full of wrestlers in Saudi Arabia." Now, CM Punk didn't respond to that, but Randy Orton did. He then said, "What's the whole thing about glass houses and stones?" Linking a story relating to his father having some sort of controversy as owner of the Jaguars a few years ago. Then Tony Khan decided, well, let's respond to that. And then he said, "I thought you only tagged me in post where you were grasping for leverage. This article's over a year old and is about as baseless a claim made about my dad years ago. That's the best you can do. Nothing. Meanwhile, in the time since this controversy with my dad and the NFL, you used the N-word on Twitch." Nobody, probably WWE, probably stepped in at that time and said, "Everybody just shut up."
Yeah, let's stop talking about it right now.
Yeah.
let's just leave it alone. Let's let the dust settle. Let's just chill.
I don't understand why Tony Khan needed to interject in any of this at all.
Yeah, I mean, he should have just kind of kept to himself. I mean, this could create some interesting Wednesday night wars. I don't know. I mean,
it's already interesting enough. And Tony Khan, this whole Wednesday Night War thing, I think what everyone needs to realize is WWE made this the Wednesday Night Wars because it was just going to be AEW all by itself. And WWE took their third most important, at least when it comes to TV sales and everything along with it, third most important show against AEW. So, AEW sitting over here excited about the Wednesday Night Wars. You're welcome. WWE gave you the Wednesday Night Wars to have a show to compete against. So when you say I'm beating NXT, remember, WWE put that show there for you to try and beat. And if you beat it, great, because still, I mean, you wouldn't have, it's literally like if you were going for a job and you were 100% the candidate and you had nothing to worry about and it was all your job, and then somebody put somebody in there that was going to compete against you and you had to then work your ass off to beat them for the job. You then got the job, but are you really the winner? Because now you just had to work your ass off to just do what before was going to be an inevitability. If anything, it took some stuff away from you to then, because now what was going to be 100% your job, all of a sudden you start seeing some weaknesses now that you had to compete for it. And that's what we got here. AEW was going to get $2 million a week without fail. Now they're getting 1 point something because a lot of people are going after, a lot of people are watching NXT, so.
I mean, here's the thing. And here's the other thing I'll add to that is AEW is beating NXT, which is, again, the third brand. Mm-hmm. It's not like they're beating Raw or SmackDown. So it's not like, to me, I mean, I don't know if they're trying to make a war out of it. I mean, this could tick off, WWE enough where they pull out all the stops. Do they do it? I don't know. I mean, it's Twitter. People get a little sensitive on Twitter these days. Social media is like that in general. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. But again, I agree with you. Tony should have just left it alone.
Tony should just leave it alone. But you know what? Maybe he's starting to realize that AEW kind of is just coasting along and maybe needs a little push themselves. That could be a reason too, because AEW's here and WWE doesn't seem to be flinching too much. So WWE's advanced their product just a little bit, but for the most part, they're not flinching.
No.
So maybe Tony Khan is trying to keep, because it's a big deal. AEW's ratings obviously after the first week dropped off a bunch. They got to keep this train going. It's brand new. AEW hasn't been going on for years. AEW has been on TV for a month and a half now.
Yeah, it's not a long term. It hasn't been a long term thing yet.
They've got to keep this moving along. So Tony Khan just thought, hey, we don't want to be forgotten about. Because AEW, here's the thing, they're doing great. Obviously, wrestling fans are watching AEW, but they don't want to be forgotten about when it comes to the big picture. Because here's the thing, Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, New Japan, they're all doing great when it comes to just being wrestling for wrestling fans. But when it comes to the national spotlight that AEW wants, hence they went to TNT, they need to stay relevant. And they probably were realizing that they weren't doing that so much. But
here's the thing,
they were just putting on great shows and wrestling fans were loving it.
Yeah, they're loving it.
But, it's not the WCW, WWF wars of the 90s. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think it would ever truly be the war. It's the Monday Night War or Wednesday Night War, whatever the hell you want to term it. It's not like they're going against Raw or SmackDown. So unless AEW says, you know what, we're going to go after Friday Night SmackDown or we're going to go after Monday Night Raw. Until then, I don't see it being a true war, but maybe this is Tony's way of maybe, lighting the fire. Maybe he's trying to create a war. I don't know, between the two companies. We won't know. I mean, Tony obviously he's a smart businessman. His family's very, they've made a lot of money. They're very wealthy. They obviously know what the heck they're doing. So maybe this is something that he thought of and like, hey, maybe I could turn this into something. So
speaking of somebody smart who you would think would be smarter than this, Jim Cornette has been released from NWA, one of the announcers for NWA Power, which in my eyes as a wrestling fan, they're not going for the war against WWF or WWE. They're just trying their best. They just got a niche.
Yep.
And they're focusing on that, and they're doing a great job. They got wrestling fans like myself watching it. Jim Cornette, though, you thought he would have been smarter, made a comment that seemed insensitive to the African-American community. He didn't go out like Randy Orton and say the N-word or anything like that, but it was enough that he has been released from yet another company.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't have the exact quotation of what he said, but I think it was something about fried chicken or something. So
fried chicken and the country of Ethiopia.
Yeah, so enough said. I mean, bad. I guess I would say it in bad taste, poor taste, so to speak. But it doesn't surprise me with Cornette. Cornette kind of says things off the cuff, anyways. But
I will say this much though, and I'll stick up for one person, and that is Jim Cornette. I can understand in this situation why he got released. It's not. It is much worse than what Don Cherry said. So my only political side here is I'm saying Don Cherry, bring him back to Hockey Night in Canada. He had his obvious issues, but nothing like. See, Jim Cornette should have been smarter than this because his comments, I feel like things should be a little more. This is why things should be more scripted. I mean, John Cherry, give him at least credit. I don't think he necessarily scripted that as much as you do in the world of wrestling. You should know what you're about to say. And with that being said, you should be a little bit smarter. The word fried chicken in Ethiopia. I mean, like, I understand it has African American connotations, but even if it doesn't, it has the poverty connotations.
Yeah.
Of, having food in a poor country. It didn't look good. And the whole reason NWA is supposed to be, well, I guess they're going to be a throwback to the 80s overall because they're using 80s standards when it comes to what was acceptable on television.
Yeah, and again, it's, Cornette should have used better verbiage, better, it was just in poor taste because...
But he's so much smarter than that, I guess.
Yeah.
He's been around the world of wrestling, so it sucks when somebody like that says something when you've already made a name for yourself.
Yeah, he's been in the business so many years. He's like, 60 years old? He's been around the business, 30, 40 years? So you would think he would know better. Unfortunately, this didn't obviously work well for him. It's curious to see what happens with Power because I thought having Cornette in there was a cool deal. So what who do they replace with him? Any idea? Any names yet?
It's probably going to be just the guys that they got going right now. But who do they have that would keep that old school feel alive? I would like to see it'd be cool. I know Tony Schiavone and Jim Ross are both working for AEW, but I feel that announce desk is a little too overcrowded. Throw Tony Schiavone over there or throw Jim Ross over there. Probably Tony Schiavone. I think he'd be better.
Well, here's the thing, too. If I'm not mistaken, so Power's taped in Georgia, right?
Yes.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Tony Schiavone is a baseball announcer down in Georgia.
In Georgia, and he was the Georgia University Bulldogs announcer as well.
So it's an obvious fit, but I don't know how that would work with AEW. So
AEW has been they let their wrestlers wrestle other places. Well, obviously that changed once they were on television.
Yeah, but it makes sense from the locale. Schiavone's from he's a Georgia boy, so. It makes sense. I'm sure AEW could work something out with NWA, but I don't know if NWA wants to pay AEW anymore than they need
What's
to.
What's Don West doing?
I know, right? Well, what is he? How old is he now?
Don West?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't even I'd have to look that up and or see if he's even still alive. Don West is off my radar.
Yeah,
I just remember him from the Impact in the days, and I know he's not there currently. That's all I know.
I wonder, I was going to say, I haven't seen that. That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Or, not Tony Schiavone. What's the other Impact guy who's not there anymore?
Ooh, I don't know now. You got me on that one.
Mike Tenay.
I know the name.
He's another wrestling.
Yep. Mike Tenay, yep.
He's around. I'm not sure exactly what he's doing. If you know, send us a tweet or something at the show at Heel to the Face
Add us
or
on
at one of our personal accounts. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of the show. Survivor Series is this weekend. Wargames is this weekend. SmackDown and Raw are this weekend. And we're taping this prior to NXT. So Wednesday night, we see what kind of SmackDown and Raw guys are going to join NXT. We see what kind of NXT surprise they have for us at Wargames.
Dynamite.
Dynamite. Let's see what they're going to try to pull out against all this week of WWE programming. We'll find out.
Be curious.
So that's it. Icebreaker 21, myself at K-Rock Jared, at Heel to the Face on Twitter. Until next week after the Survivor Series. Talk to you then.